I'd like to briefly introduce the panel before I go to questions, and then of course if you want to ask some questions, we'll take them as well. Moses Wakesa, he's a Business Development Director. Moses is a registered project manager with 17 years of experience in managing projects across diverse economic sectors in Europe, Asia, the Pacific, and Africa. Holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, Master of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering, Applied Mechanics from the University of Nairobi, and a postgraduate certificate in Project Planning, Appraisal and Financing from the University of Bradford. I think what's clear here, you've got to have your academic credentials to get into KenGen, which is a good thing. He has undergone various leadership development programs, graduate of the Advanced Management Program from Strathmore Business School, was appointed Business Development Director in 2014, responsible for driving the company's core business of capacity expansion through planning and execution of projects and development of alternative revenue sources through new business. Previous experience includes management of projects in the infrastructure sector. Departments, project execution, capital planning, and new business. Then to his right, we have David Muthike, who's the Strategy and Business Performance Director, a distinguished business strategist with tested experience in power sector strategy, formulation, and implementation. Holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical and Electronic Engineering, Master of Business Administration and Strategy, Postgraduate Diploma in Project Appraisal and Management, and a Certificate in Advanced Management and Leadership Program. He's a graduate engineer with Institute of Engineers of Kenya and a member of the Kenya Institute of Management. Appointed to the company's Strategy and Business Performance Division in September 2014, a major role of this function is to support the company in maintaining thought leadership in power generation and related services. Responsibilities, development and management of the company's strategy by identifying and driving execution of strategic initiatives and growth opportunities, driving innovation that develops new ways of meeting the company's goals, leading and managing the company's result-based performance, accountability system, driving knowledge harvesting and transfer across the business. Previously worked in the departments within the company, including the Managing Director's Office, Corporate Planning, Technical Audit, Institutional Strengthening. And then finally, to his right, and last but not least, is John Mudani, who's the Finance and ICT Director, but he's also a writer and an author, and very cryptic on Twitter. If you want to follow him, he's on Wiseman. John Mudani is a zealous financial management expert with extensive experience, holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree in accounting, MBA in marketing, Master of the International Business Administration, a member of Kenya's Institute of Management, KIM, and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, ICPAC. Prior experience includes Coca-Cola, Orbit Distributors, where he was the MD and CEO, Kenya Airways, in the golden era we were talking about, 2002 to 2008, when I remember you'd land anywhere in Africa and it would just be our plane and our flag. It was a really great time. World Vision International and PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Mudani joined KenGen in November 2008 as the Finance and Commercial Director. Became the Finance and ICT Director in 2013. Looks after capital raising, management of finances, banking relations, financial reporting, budget process and control, balance sheet restructuring, cost-saving mechanisms, and responsible for the development of cutting-edge information technology infrastructure. Departments are corporate finance, finance and information, communication and technology. I think we got all bases covered with our panel. If I might first, and if you got any questions, just tag me or put your hand up in a little while. I've just got a few questions I wanted to run through first. And I wanted to turn to Rebecca first of all. We heard your story. Really remarkable. What age did you go to boarding school, by the way? What class was it? you said?
Class 4.
Which is?
I don't know girls are how old in class 4, but I was that age.
It was,
Some
how old? 8. Yeah.
9 or 10.
Yeah.
9 years or something.
I came to boarding school in Nairobi when I was 9. I found it very traumatic. You know, you're describing just being put on a bus. I would have been crying my eyes out. So very, very brave. Rebecca, what I wanted to ask you about is you've been playing this role, as I said, of, you know, a lot of women I'm seeing are aspiring. They see you as somebody who's led the way, and I think they want to follow. And I think you've been very invested in making that happen for people. What I wanted to say, ask a couple of things. First, female MD of KenGen after 60 years. Is your gender an issue, or is it not an issue? Should we even focus on it? And then the second part of my question, if I may, is, you know, what is the style? The Swedes talk of female leadership in Sweden. They've got lots of government. I think more of the government is female than male. Eric Solheim, who was our previous guest from UNEP, was describing how Norway is completely transformed it, that even the man is feeling inadequate now, that, you know, that they're looking for their role. What is your style? We heard it, but how would you best describe it?
So I'll start with the question whether gender is even an issue, and should you focus on gender? When you see Rebecca in KenGen, don't focus on the gender. See a business magnate.
Ooh.
See a governance champion. See a good leader. If you wish, an engineer or a legal engineer, a combination of that. But if the gender sweetens it, you can look at it at the end. Yeah.
What about leadership? You know, would you say that it's a feminine leadership you're trying to bring in, or that's not really?
I think leadership doesn't know gender. Leadership knows no gender. Gentlemen are very good leaders, and so are ladies. There are differences. It is said that ladies are more inclusive. Ladies, I don't want to be controversial, maybe more caring.
Yeah.
And those feminine skills are also valuable in leadership and to companies. And so I bring into KenGen what any gentleman leader would bring, but with a feminine touch. And so I don't think there is a difference between female leadership, not much. It's just the touch. But the qualities of leadership are not gender-based at all. We can be as good leaders, and we are, just as our male counterparts. And that's how I would like to look at it.
Thank you. What's been your experience since you became the CEO?
I must say it has been a good experience. I was lucky to get a lot of internal acceptance. Having been in KenGen, I didn't realize what level of acceptance you can get from a company, and that has been above average. That has made my work easier. I did not need to learn the business. If I have invested 24 years or so in this engineering business, the business I know, that I am sure. You can take that to the bank. So having known the business, it's just now the leadership that I have to concentrate on. That has been my experience. But of course, having been a lady, after many, many gentlemen, everything was so masculine. And when I was appointed, the HR director allocated me with a big Prado. And he didn't realize that all the security details were all men. from the door, up the lift, and wherever. And so I decided to get into that Prado. I'm a skirt wearer. I would struggle every day until one day I realized the guards are rather enthusiastic. They have looked at my legs in the morning, noontime, early evening, even as I leave. And I went to the HR director. I told him, things must change. The following day, I found some female security detail. And I remember the first week I was appointed. Let me tell this story. I was in the lift carrying my handbag, and the security guards asked me, do I help you? Because everybody was confused. And I said, no, I'll carry my handbag. In the lift, they are not sure what to do, whether to look at me. And I decided to just get help from HR, and they did. And the office itself was so masculine. It had never imagined anybody with a handbag and high heels and a skirt will enter that office. All that has been sorted is a story for another day. That's my experience.
You know, we've had a lot of challenges, Rebecca, with corporate governance in a number of companies in the Nairobi Stock Exchange. You've spoken about that briefly. What is your perspective on corporate governance? How do you try and make your organization, a best of class in that space?
Of course, looking at my background, my experience as company secretary for about 10 years, having won an award, Company Secretary of the Year and Champion Governance, that has been one of my biggest strengths. And we have built structures in KenGen, starting with a board, a strong board with the board committees. We also ascribe to the corporate governance regulations. We try to benchmark for best practice. And if you come to KenGen, you will find solid corporate governance. And in business terms, I can confirm that we are doing quite well in this country. And that is my passion. And I believe even as the board was looking for a candidate, one of my strongest points was corporate governance. And I think corporate governance, I believe, truly believe, good corporate governance is the foundation of corporate organizations in Kenya. No matter how well we are doing, no matter how other things are going well, without corporate governance, it is not sustainable. We intend to take it to the next level and now ensure that we are just the top, not even among the top. Yeah.
The president has yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday, was speaking in Parliament about his Big Four agenda. There's a lot of excitement around that Big Four agenda. I saw some statistics which I think Simon was debating me on, because somebody said that our manufacturing is now only 10% of our GDP, in part because remittances have gone up, so the composition has changed, but still. How do you see your role at KenGen today in terms of stimulating manufacturing and delivering what is the most important thing, I think, for our economy, which is jobs for our people? How do you play that role?
At KenGen, we have embraced the Big Four plan, what was launched by the president and the government. We believe that energy is the biggest enabler of the Big Four. We know that the Big Four will be anchored on infrastructure, the roads, the water, and energy. We verily believe that energy is the cornerstone, and we shall be the biggest contributor to the success of implementation of the Big Four. And that's why we have a project pipeline. And our role will be to implement those projects in good time so that the country has adequate power to be able to do the manufacturing, be able to have food security, the health, and the housing. And we shall put all our efforts in providing clean and affordable power to be able to attain the success of these big four.
David, of course, is the Strategy and Business Performance Director. KenGen has been known for some innovation, geothermal in particular, cutting-edge research. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in that space, the upcoming G2G Global Innovation Summit, and how you're keeping the organization at the cutting edge of what is quite a fast-moving space. I mean, I was looking at some data about solar energy, the prices that are now coming on the grid in places like Dubai. How do you stay abreast of it? How do you decide what you really want to focus on? Can you give us a bit of an insight?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to start and say that innovation is making things happen. And innovation is allowing people to think freely and to give them the opportunity and the environment to be able to put in place or rather to implement what they are thinking freely. Now, at KenGen, this is a journey we have started for the last 4 years. And you have seen quite significant progress when staff come together and innovate. And one of the big innovations you have seen in KenGen is the wellhead power generation, which brings power quickly to the economy without necessarily waiting for many years to have the big power plants come online. But most important in our core mandate of power generation, and in particular in geothermal, is what we are seeing as cutting-edge drilling technology. And the innovation basically here is when you drill 3 kilometers underground.
Is that how deep you're drilling?
That's how deep you're drilling. And in the course of drilling, you realize you might not get the steam you're looking for if you go vertically. Then you have to innovate to cut an angle, and you can go some other 1 kilometer to be able to tap that steam. And that is what we are calling directional drilling. It's a cutting-edge innovation, given that when you are going 3 kilometers down, you don't even see what is happening. You're relying with the data coming and analyzing that data. Having said that, there is another also very critical cutting-edge innovation within KenGen. And basically, this is geoscientific research. Targeting those wells is not an easy science. And you have seen innovation in that area that has made us tap some of the biggest wells we have, like 30 megawatt well capacities. Having said those big examples of innovation we are doing, what is important is the company to provide the environment for staff to exercise that and allow the staff to take that risk. And what we have done at KenGen is to make it as basic as possible. So we have given staff a full day from morning to evening for them to sit in a forum like this and present their ideas in every quarter. And those ideas, we have a mechanism at which they are filtered. We have an internal innovation council, purely led by the team and supported by the board, by the CEO and us executive directors. And that team filters those ideas, as many as over 100 ideas in a year, and only about 40 or 50 that make it to the Global Innovation Seminar I'm talking about. And that summit is actually a prestigious event, and any staff who makes up there, we recognize them and reward them and give them the opportunity. And the CEO has allocated a budget for that. And the summit for this year is actually happening next month. That's 18th to 22nd of June. And looking at the journey we have come, we have also tried now to also help others. We are also supporting the universities, and we have some partnerships with the universities to make innovation a major transformation agenda for KenGen.
Have you got an example of an innovation that you've then taken up from this process?
Exactly. In drilling, for instance, we normally use a lot of drilling detergent. And this detergent we normally purchase. Most of it comes from US, others are manufactured. But we have staff who have actually come up with the formula how to manufacture
So you're
that
doing
will be
something for
done.
local
So
manufacturing?
actually, we are in the process of setting a factory for.
Is that one of the three-pronged strategy?
Exactly. Exactly. That's one of the way to create value, to try and get your own product which is more cost effective, and it will make us be able even to market it in the region in the future. Ethiopia, Djibouti, and other geothermal regions that are coming up. That's one of the examples. There are many others. But to add on that, as far as innovation is concerned, there's aspects of thinking of innovation as technical subject. You have quite a bit of innovation even in human resource management that we are seeing. And in building at the theme that the CEO talked about, building, bring out the best. We are seeing a lot of innovation in process engineering, how we are doing work, how we are improving day-to-day work. And this is something you cannot see physically, but it has a lot of hint and potential to make a company better, and that's what is making KenGen move forward.
Can I ask you to tell us a little bit about this G2G Global Innovation Summit you're describing? Is it an energy-based summit, or is just, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes.
And how you are seeking to position and benefit from that?
Yes. It started as an internal, we used to call it technical seminar. We started as an internal technical seminar. And we will bring these technical innovations, people would present. But in the second year, we realized it's more than just a technical seminar. It's actually an innovation seminar. And this year, we have moved from the word innovation seminar to innovation summit. And on top of that, we have called it global. We are inviting international companies who actually come and even exhibit, share the innovation they have. And we are creating partnerships with those companies. That's one of the areas we are benefiting a lot, to open the KenGen to the international world and be able to leverage what is happening across the globe. And this year it will be an exciting one. The interest is quite good. And I wish to invite the participants this evening.
We'll be there.
June 18th, to see the KenGen finest mind of scientists, officers. The CEO will be there. These gentlemen, they will be there. And you see the finest of KenGen. KenGen has its own innovation. They will be exhibiting that. And you see the practicality of innovation and the benefits it can bring to the business.
Thank you. John, can I turn to you? John, why don't you break it down for us? You know, how do you make your money? What does the business cycle look like? What are the new exciting areas that you're seeing happening? Because when I looked at the results, I saw steam was one of your fastest growing revenue components. Would you give us a view on what's happening?
Okay. Good evening. Now, I think just to talk about how we make money, it's good to understand our business. KenGen, we build power plants. And after we build those power plants, we lease them out, actually. We give them to Kenya Power Lighting. We're also a manufacturing company. We manufacture energy. So every light you're seeing here, we actually a unit, and we are classified by Kenya Revenue Authority under manufacturing. So we manufacture power, we also build power plants. Now, in terms of how we make our money, one is through those contracts, we call them power purchase agreements, which we sign with our off-taker or a distributor, Kenya Power Lighting. And there are two ways we make money from that. What I talked about, we build power plants. There's what's called capacity revenue. So capacity revenue, which is almost 90% of our revenue, comes by building power plants and ensuring those power plants are available. And available here means they are mechanically available, ready to fire. It is like hiring a car. If you hire a car, you can choose to drive it around, go to Masai Mara, go everywhere else, or you can pack it and you'll still have to pay for it. So really, that's the capacity revenue. Then we have the energy revenue, which is from the units that we sell. So that's the main source of revenue for KenGen, what comes from power plants available and the units that's generated. The second source of revenue that we get is what we call steam. And steam is one of the emergent sources of revenue that we have. For those who look at our financial results, by half year we made, I think, almost 3.6 billion. So it's quite a big stream of revenue for us, around like 16%. So steam is one of the areas we make our money. The third area we make our money is what we call other sources of revenue. And that takes the form of the KenGen C that the MDD talked about, which areas that we have competence and synergy. As we talked about steam, we talked about consultancy, so you'll find other income in our P&L. But our main source of revenue is from selling energy and availing power plants, which can be used to generate power to support a Big Four agenda for Kenya nation. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you just talk us through the latest revenues, please, John, if you might? Yes.
Now, if you look at KenGen, as I talked about, the electricity revenue, which comprises capacity revenue and energy revenue, is what we call the regulated revenue. So that comes mainly from the power purchase agreement that we've signed with Kenya Power Lighting. The other revenue is what we call, for every kilowatt hour, and I think it's been emphasized by my MD, that KenGen is now focusing on geothermal. As we focus on geothermal, what people look at more out there is the energy side. But there's a material, call it the fuel, that makes geothermal work. And to be honest, that's the cream on the cake. That's the greater future. Because we use our own resources, either through borrowed funds or our own funds, and we drill, as David has said, we go 3 kilometers underground and we get the steam out. For that steam, we sell it. And for every kilowatt hour, we sell on average 3 US cents per kilowatt hour. If you look at the geothermal, the main power generation, steam is quite significant as a source of revenue. But we are also looking forward, in addition to other sources of revenue which we have, which comes for consultancy. We are experts in the region as far as geothermal technology is concerned. So we do consultancy for the region, for Ethiopia, we've done for Rwanda, we've done for Mauritius. There are also opportunities within Sudan. So we also are able to do that. We also do drilling. We have got drilling equipments that we avail, particularly for the IPPs, in addition to drilling for ourselves. And all those are other sources of revenue that become the cream on the cake, if you look at our turnover.
Did you just talk about countries besides Kenya just now? You said South
Yes,
Sudan.
we do.
Yes.
We are currently, and maybe David, we are currently looking at opportunities we have Ethiopia, we have Sudan, we've done work for Rwanda. As I said, we are 9th in the world and we are expert in Africa. So when you talk geothermal, what comes to your mind is KenGen. Starting from seismic, starting from geologists, how to assess where that geothermal is, we have the team that knows what to do, including our own, availing our own equipment to do the drilling. So that's that's why when the MD talked about the 3-tier strategy, we talked about KenGen C. And KenGen C is the synergistic opportunity that we have, where we can leverage our capacity, our potential, our knowledge and skills, and our resources to exploit energy-related opportunities other than that. So yes, to say, yes, we are doing a lot of work for the region. Even now we have got tenders that are going on, which we are participating in affecting other countries.
That's interesting. I think from a shareholder point of view, people weren't necessarily aware of that. Very interesting. Thank you for that. John, I'm not going to pose the question that I know someone is going to pose from the audience, but we'll wait for that question for you to answer when it's posed. If I might now turn to Moses Wakesa, please. Moses, sorry you came last, but hardly not least. Moses, can you tell us about Olkaria 5 construction, the anticipated impact on the economy, and also talk about other green projects in the pipeline, including solar?
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, I can talk about many of them, but
yes,
now that you've been very specific, I'll
no,
go
no,
to that.
you go. If you want to generalize, generalize.
Very well. Okay, thank you. I think the opportunity cost of not having power is higher than being ahead of demand for power. And that is how we operate. In the pipeline that we currently have and we continue to deliver, we ensure that we're investing ahead of growth of demand. Because if the converse happens, then it becomes very expensive for an economy. And I think those of you who have some knowledge on the African continent, you've seen what happened very recently in South Africa, despite them having been ahead, far much ahead of their demand. And projects in the power sector are not delivered overnight the way you would walk into a supermarket and pick a commodity and pay for it. So what Ali Khan then is hinting at is sometime early last year, we had a high-level event, key-level event in Olkaria, where the president broke ground for our current flagship project, which is Olkaria 5. Olkaria 5, previously, before we went to tender, we had estimated with the steam available that we would be able to generate 140 megawatts. However, the way we structure our tenders is such that we create competition for the various bidders to give us higher efficiencies, and they also compete on pricing. We are now ending up with a plant that is going to be 165 megawatts. We are on course. The plant overall progress now is at 35% complete. And maybe just to touch on some interesting aspects, if some of you have had a chance to do a small project or building a house, you may have had the experience of the rigor that you have to deal with different types of fundis, procurement of material, dealing with procurement of licenses. Now that's a very small scale of the number of moving parts that we manage as we implement projects. We have a project whose different components that will be assembled here in Olkaria are being manufactured across about 8 countries globally, including some fabrication that is happening with a local company here. And the supply chain and logistics of managing that is being run by a very talented team. I can afford to switch off my phone for the entire weekend. I will not worry the way you would worry about a fundi waking you up for payment. And things are running as smoothly as you can imagine. And that's a capacity that we've built over the years in bringing forth renewable power projects. So we anticipate that the date that has been set, as the MD said, of July 2019 is not a negotiable date. The weather that is happening currently, we are happy for the rains. They are filling up our dams. But at the same time, there is some disruption at site, but we are managing. And we are very happy to be in that space, spearheading projects that then safeguard what buttresses the economy of this country in power delivery. The portfolio that is largely renewable, driven by geothermal. In geothermal alone, other than Olkaria 5, projects that have been tendered, completed, at different stages of implementation, we have about 340 megawatts today. We have other projects that we're just closing out on financing. We'll be going to tender in geothermal again, another 210 megawatts. But besides geothermal, we continue to invest and safeguard our core assets of hydropower. And one of the key or interesting topics in the public today is about conservation of water. We play an instrumental role in conserving water on the cascades. And we continuously then invest in ensuring that those assets are operating optimally. We have a project that we are looking at now to see how to increase the capacity of our reservoirs, mainly targeting Masinga Dam. We'll be raising the capacity of storage in Masinga by 12%. We're also looking at other technologies. David talked about innovation. Available technologies out there where you drain the dam and you bring the water back up for storage, such that you are running the plants continuously to manage these vagaries that impact us arising out of weather, what you call pump storage. That's a project currently under investigation. But interestingly, in our cascades, we have now just completed a feasibility for a 42 megawatt solar project. That will then complement the generation that comes out of water. We already have a wind farm in Gong. We have a breakthrough in Meru on progressing with the wind project, the 80 megawatts. We should be coming back in the market very soon. But we are also expanding our portfolio on Gong Hills with a further 50 megawatts of wind. So there is nothing in our current pipeline that is not renewable. And we are very happy to be playing in that space. For those of you who've never been to Olkaria, sometimes when we give you stories across platforms like this, it is one thing to get a feeling of the buzz of activity that happens in Olkaria. David mentioned a drilling rig. A drilling rig is a 24-hour operation. For between 50 and 60 days, when crew are up there, they do drilling out there in the bush in a camp, containerized offices, containerized accommodation. Today on site, on Olkaria 5, we have more than 180 people working daily. And we are very proud to report that we are managing any unforeseen events of accidents or injury to our personnel. And that is something we are proud of, and we invite you to come and witness what is actually happening there. Thank you, Enrique.
Can I add and ask you now about a couple of things? You know, the whole industrial park concept, as I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, was somewhere like Olkaria and Naivasha would have been an ideal place for industries to come in, for you to wholesale energy to them. What's happening on that point? What about other, you know, other income streams, drilling services? I know we touched on them, but can you just give us some feedback on that as well?
Very well. You all aware that the standard gauge railway extension from Nairobi to Naivasha is already happening. There's a lot of activity along that line. If you get a chance to drive down to Suswa, where some water has been washing away soil, and there's a clip on social media showing that there might be two continents. I think it's a good thing. I was there a couple of weeks ago. It's a big tourist attraction for us. So I think let's just fund that story. There are a lot of people coming from outside to see that splitting. But my focus to you is, if you go down that road, you may notice a lot of activities. The building of the standard gauge railway is happening. The master plan at a country level is to have certain areas that were zoned out for industrial activity. And Naivasha was specifically picked out as a hub for clothing and apparels, besides supporting food processing. Now, we are uniquely located within that general area in the sense that the energy that we use for driving turbines to generate electricity, which is steam. Steam is the medium that brings up the energy, which is heat energy. And that steam is what we use to generate power. So the energy is heat. Now, traditionally, in the apparels and some food processing industries, their source of heating is steam. But they run boilers so that then they can generate their own steam for purposes of production. Now, there is a cost to that. And we have already completed a feasibility to create an attraction, a value proposition for would-be operators of manufacturing, processing, such that we can offer very competitive prices for delivery of heat, direct heat through steam that we drill 3 kilometers. There are wells that are ready for that purpose. Now, you can't transport the steam for too far a distance. You need to go no beyond 2 kilometers, which means when the railway, the standard gauge railway hub hits Naivasha, we are uniquely positioned to offer energy services to those companies or manufacturers, both local and international, that are in the business of manufacturing using energy, heat energy. But besides that, our traditional business, which is now the generation and sale of power, electricity, they are industries that are sensitive to the pricing of power, but also the quality of power. Now, given that we have a hub within Olkaria already generating 534 megawatts, and we are adding in another 3 years, probably another 400 megawatts, we are in a position to directly supply some of those companies with reliable, competitively priced electricity and over a quality period of time. Some of the such companies are like your cement manufacturers. Cement uses a lot of power, and between 30 to 40% of the cement cost is actually electricity. Now, if we can then have such setting up in Olkaria, we see an overall impact across the economy and, say, the construction industry. Now, within such major consumers, there would be what you call complementing companies. If traditionally you have a wood processing factory, there would be other people who back it up. And we have plans. We finished a feasibility study. We have already cited a location. We are now working with the various government ministries and entities to do the relevant infrastructure. Besides the standard gauge railway, we are even today talking to the different manufacturers. So if there are any that are in this room, we are happy to engage with you to further move that agenda of establishing the industrial park. It will not just be KenGen alone doing an industrial park. There are other players, and you may have read this in the media, who are also interested in doing industrial parks. Location ideal, you're on the major trunk inland roads, and the energy and utility advantages that I've talked about. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joseph Otoko. I'm a building contractor. I have 2 questions. One will go to Madam Rebecca. First of all, congratulations. That is a great milestone. I would like to know, with the strategic plan you've given us, it shows that you are having enough power, which is beyond the demand that is there. But we are seeing other sources of energy that people are being talked about, like Lamu, coal plant, and probably nuclear. The question is that, do you think that with what you have is relevant, or it really makes business sense to develop those powers? And second, we'll still go to you. And I'd like you to, the aspect of innovation in the company. You see that somebody can be able to produce an idea that's helping the company. But my question is, which is most challenging in many business, how do you accommodate that person that I've made an innovation as a person? Okay, how ownership aspect? There's some companies say you've used our resources and everything, and that really discourages innovation. How do people go to that from a corporate governance view? Thank you.
Good evening, panelists. My name is Jonathan Das. I'm a Lean Six Sigma consultant. My first question actually goes to Madam Rebecca. And you discussed in your earlier sharing on your development on the practices to become a high performer. You know, as a business owner, I would like you to share something around that. My second question is around the reliability of power. You know, we see still power cuts, the reliability of the distributor. How do we see that panning out, and how can KenGen support us to make sure that there is reliable power? And then lastly, on the manufacturing side, our president mentioned that manufacturing is one of our big 4. Today we see cost of electricity around 16, 17 cents per unit. Ethiopia, not too far from us, is around 7. How do we see that going forward, and will there be a drive to bring that down?
Good evening. Thanks for hosting us today. My name is Silla. I work for an investment bank. My questions are more financial based. So I'll just start with power purchase agreements. Perhaps if you could elaborate, for example, geothermal PPAs, the tenor, the cost, is it fixed, is it flexible going forward? Also, I think one observation we've had is that, as you mentioned, capacity revenue is quite important, and the more capacity comes in, the higher the cost per megawatt on your P&L. So I just wanted to try and understand exactly how the overall tariff sort of build-up is, considering this is a fixed cost, whether or not KPLC uses this power. And lastly, perhaps on the cash flow statement, I think one other observation is that despite strong cash operating growth, the capex is always higher than what you actually make. So from a shareholder perspective, at what point do you actually get to see sort of free cash flow being generated based on your pipeline going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. Appreciated. Now, our power purchase agreement has 3 elements in it. The first element is a compensation for the cost of investment. So we are compensated for the full cost plus the financing cost plus a return to shareholder of 12.5% after tax. So that's what we call capacity revenue. So over the tenor of the PPA, which for geothermal is around 25 years, normally 25 years, we are compensated for the investment. If the power plant was $100 million, we'll recover that $100 million, escalated, part of it is escalated. Then we have the cost of the investment plus the financing costs plus taxes. That's what I'm talking about, 12.5% after tax. Before tax, 18.6%. The second component of the power purchase agreement is a compensation for projected fixed overheads. We call FOMCR, fixed overhead and maintenance and management costs, maintenance costs. So that compensates us for my salaries, our salaries, the cost of running the power plant. It's estimated, a share, and put into that. The third component is what we call VOMCR, which is variable operating cost. Let me just call it variable operating cost, which is supposed to compensate us for the running costs as we do maintenance and vary that. So the tenor of the loan, of the power plant, you get all your returns back, plus a decent return, which is the 12.5%. Technically, this is supposed to be reviewed periodically. The VOM and FMCR is scalable. Is scalable, meaning that you adjust for inflation as time moves by. For the local cost, we use the underlying CBA, central bank underlying cost, consumer cost. And for the imported inflation, we use the index of the foreign country where the major currency is. I need also to mention, number one, fuel is a pass-through. So the cost of fuel, and that's why steam comes in. If we use diesel, it comes in. That is a pass-through. What do I mean by pass-through? Pass-through means that we use it to generate power, and we invoice our customer, Kenya Power Lighting, for the value that we've spent during that period. The second thing is a pass-through is the exchange fluctuations. So at the time of signing the power purchase agreement, we fix the exchange rate. And therefore, as the exchange rate fluctuates, it's a pass-through, either as a credit or as a receivable, depending on which direction the currency moves. So that's really what runs over the tenor of the period of the power purchase agreement. So the build-up is cost plus margin, plus cost plus margin. So you're compensated for the cost of investment, the cost of running power plants, and given a margin after paying tax. I think that's how we work. and I've given the tariff. The only thing I need to mention is that the return is on equity. So we do assume it is taken at a corporate level that every power purchase agreement that we do sign, it's 70% financed by debt and 30% by shareholders' equity. And therefore, the return of 12.5% is on the shareholders' equity. Now, in terms of cash flow, and indeed the capex, what is, again, I want to take us where I started at the beginning. What's our business? Our business is to build power plants. So we build power plants. If we don't build power plant, if we don't commission any power plant, you don't see a jump on our revenue. So, for example, Moses has said that All Carrier 5 will be commissioned next year. So that will show a jump on our, because the power plant will be ready and revenue will come out of that. So we build power plants and we get compensated in terms of our investment and the cost of running those power plants. So the capex, the capital expenditure that we spend, 70% is out of borrowing and 30% comes from equity. And that's how we make our money. Now, in terms of our cash flow, again, as I've mentioned, over the tenure of the power purchase agreement, we plan to be compensated for the investment plus the borrowing, any funding that we did, plus imagine that's decent. We use decent, so that's what the Act says, a reasonable margin for us. So when we do power plants, when we build them, we sign agreements with financiers, we agree in advance how the funds will come, and then how to be repaid over the tenure of the power plant. I hope that addresses your questions. Thank you.
Did you want to just address part of the question about the price per kilowatt hour in comparison to Ethiopia?
Yes. Now, our price, we have a blended tariff, as has been mentioned here. The mix, when Madam MD was presenting, she said that we have different sources of energy. We have geothermal, we have hydro, we have wind, we have thermal. I must say, on that scale, the most expensive is thermal. Where thermal is because you use diesel, and then also because most of the time it's imported, it brings an inflationary element and exchange variation element to it. So you find that thermal gets very high. At the peak of it, if I recall, it was 2009, it was coming to almost 32 US cents per kilowatt hour. That has reduced significantly, and the contribution of thermal, as it was indicated, is fairly low, because now most of our contribution is coming from renewables, which is geothermal. Geothermal is much cheaper. Blended comes, if your cost of investment plus the cost of steam is plus minus 7 US cents per kilowatt hour. Then you have hydro. Hydro is the cheapest. And basically because most of our hydro were built long time ago. The blended tariff on hydro is plus minus 3 US cents per kilowatt hour. Several, just because of the adjustments, you find that so it really reduces. So when we come up with with the blended tariff in Kenya, it builds this together. And that's why as we use more of renewable energy and less of the thermal, you will see our cost of power coming down. And it has come from a high of 22 US cents to 18. Now I think it's around 14. So as we put more hydro, more wind is a lot cheaper again. It's around 8, 9. Solar, once that gets into a bit of it, it's coming slightly lower because of the reduction. As we get more renewable, you'll see the tariff coming down much, much lower, closer to geothermal tariff. I think we should, in the long run, not be too far from 7, 8 US per kilowatt range.
I can start with a question asked by Joseph about Lamu, about nuclear. And the Ministry of Energy has what we call least cost development plan. And I think planning for power is one of those big things that happens at the policy level. And every project that we implement, including those that KenGen implements, all emanate from the least cost development plan. So all the projects, including the ones you have mentioned, so long as they are in the least cost development plan, and I know they are in that plan, then we support them, because it takes into account the long term and the future of the country. We know that any plans now for nuclear is for plans that may come on board in the next 15 to 20 years. Then on the practices, there are things that have worked for me. I believe they may be universal and may work for many people. Just identifying the success markers, building on things that will make you more productive, and some of the ones I shared. But in addition to that, being very disciplined has worked for me. I have to put a lot of discipline into what I do. Hard work has become a pleasure because the fruits are quite sweet. Then good planning my day from the morning, knowing what projects I need to move, which people I need to reach out to, which people are looking for me. Just planning your day and making sure that I know what I must deliver on a particular day, no matter what. So if I build on those, it has really worked for me. Together with what I said, I have to have clarity of what I want to do, both in my social life and official life. I have to work on my energy, and that is a big one. It's a mover. You've got to be energetic, because energy is the secret of success. Productivity, removing things like procrastination, removing things that don't matter and derail you, working on your courage and confidence, and also your influence. So those are some of the things that I intentionally work on in order to have my personal growth as I look at the role models that are around me. Then on reliability of power, being in the industry, I know that there are so many projects that are lined up to strengthen the transmission system. We have seen quite a bit of improvement, and especially when the big line, transmission line from Olkaria to Mombasa was commissioned in August, we are able to export more geothermal into the system all the way to Mombasa. And a lot more of that is happening. I know of some lines in Western Kenya, the eastern part. And all these efforts, I am sure, will be able to increase reliability of power also into the future. On the innovation, how we handle the innovations, of course, the good ideas are rewarded at a personal level, but past that, we patent those ideas and implement them as the company. And I truly believe there is no greater satisfaction to a good, hard-working employee who is innovative as seeing your idea being patented by your company, being implemented. It is a source of professional growth, your technical abilities, a lot of recognition, and I have seen staff who just get satisfaction from that, and in the following innovation seminar, they want to come up with more ideas. So that's how we handle the innovation, but also very high recognition. At that seminar, we feature them in others, we give them opportunities to present papers in international conferences and all that in order to foster that environment of innovation.
I just wanted to add what you are saying in terms of innovation. I think one of the big things, Joseph, the CEO has done is to make innovation part and parcel of our strategy. So it's very clear, actually, we call it ONG5. innovation and continuous improvement. And it's communicated across the business. Number two, providing those resources where people can freely sit and try those new ideas is very, very key, very, very key. The other thing the CEO and the board have done is also, they have set aside some funds to establish KenGen Research and Development Lab, where these ideas can be tested. And that again anchors the motivation for staff to be able to come forward and innovate. But there's some things here maybe did not mention. Innovation is making mistakes, and don't recall any punishment for guys who are trying to innovate. There's a recent one where they said they are going to fix the blade of a turbine, a very expensive equipment. And it took the executive 2 weeks to debate whether we allow them or not. And interestingly, we ended up saying, as he said, gather the courage, let them do it. And it happened. You can imagine the joy. And they earned themselves some international trips to go even showcase their innovation. So that's something I wanted to add on that. The question on the reliability of power by the expert, Lean Six Sigma. This is the time we are thinking to have Lean Six Sigma in KenGen. So what are we doing in terms of managing this? Cost has been mentioned. One of the big things is to make sure geothermal, which is base load, it's cost effective. It's not depend on the fluctuation of the fuel cost. And that you have seen it actually stabilize the prices. Of course, Ethiopia is cheaper because of the handle they are doing. But we know there was also a component of government funding. But we are seeing with the time, they all start feeling the issue of pressure. And I think, if I'm not very wrong, I think they're also discussing about raising the tariff. So it's something to do with cost reflective in the long run. So in terms of that, we have hydro, which is a good stabilizer of power prices. And the rains that we are seeing they're going to have a positive impact in the overall cost of power. In terms of reliability, what has KenGen done? I think there's one aspect we have done as a company. We used to have gas turbines in Nairobi. We have since moved those gas turbines to West Kenya to provide the peaking power to make sure there is more reliability of power in that region. Moses here, there's a project he's standing very closely. One of our hydro plants, which we are discussing with the government to make sure it comes in as a peaking unit, to make sure we stabilize the system when we have the non-dispatchable technologies coming online like wind and solar.
Carbon credits, what's happening with that? What kind of volume are we trading? How do we see the opportunity there? Ahmed, who's in the back, is asking, and obviously from Garissa, is asking about, or the whole debate and noise there's been about what's been happening up there, sort of very unusual rainfall patterns. But can you tell us, what exactly has happened up there in these spaces? And then Ahmed is asking, is compensation being offered? So maybe you want to deal with that. And he's right here. And then finally, solar energy. Somebody's asking, and I know you addressed this in Washington, but why aren't we seeing more solar pumped into the national grid at this point in time?
With a question about rain and floods and what is happening. And I want to start by saying that we send a lot of compassion. We are concerned about the effect of the floods. And yeah, we really sympathize with the destruction that we have seen. But as a matter of clarification, KenGen owns a cascade of dams, starting with Masinga, which is the largest reservoir. And then that is connected to Kamburu. After Kamburu, we have Gitaru, followed by Kinderuma, and then Kiambere. Masinga is not yet full. We are still about 5 meters to go. But the kind of rainfall we have seen this year is that we have seen a lot more rainfall downstream, and the water is not necessarily drawing out of the cascade. We have seen some tributaries feeding into Kinderuma, And because Kiambere is also a very large catchment, we have seen a lot of rains and a lot of tributaries feeding into Kiambere. Because of that, that is why there has been a lot more water. The river Tana has burst its banks. And from a cascade point of view, I think the dams have mitigated that effect by collecting some of the water. And the water that is being seen downstream of Kiambere is actually not emanating from the dams. It is the rain itself and the tributaries that are feeding into Kiambere. As KenGen, being a responsible corporate body, we are participating in our CSR and our corporate investment in being able to contribute to alleviating the pain that has been caused by the floods. But it's a good point to make a clarification that the water is not being released from the dams and it is not flowing from the dams. It's just that we have received above average water downstream, and the dams have actually mitigated. If Masinga was so full and we had so much water, then we would see even much more water downstream. Yeah, so I just thought I'll clarify that.
Thanks, because I think there's been a lot of confusion on that point. And when we were speaking earlier and Simon was there, Simon was saying this was an unusual rainfall pattern that we've actually seen, and that where like you're saying, it's raining downstream, which it has not done for a number of years. Is that correct?
Yes, there has been a lot more rain downstream into the larger Kiambere area, the larger downstream of Tana River, than the Aberdares. And that's why we still have to fill Masinga. Masinga has about 5.5 meters to go before it is full.
It is true, Alikan, that solar prices have really come down at a capital cost level. There has been globally a lot of research that has gone in on the technology for solar, PV solar. It is also true that deployment of solar, that's how fast you put up a project to connect it in the grid, is much faster. You're looking at between 8 to 12 months. So the question then that is being put across is, why shouldn't we, living around the tropics where solar is readily available, should we not be putting in more solar into the grid? And it's a valid question. We are working on bringing in solar. In fact, as KenGen, we've been carrying out data logging. We've been collecting data to establish suitable sites for installation of solar. And as a country, we are not short of land. Unlike other countries where putting up solar would be a challenge, because it also occupies a lot of land. However, you need to visualize your grid system as a closed piping of water, where at night you maintain a pressure point and there are not too many people opening taps. In the morning when they wake up, everybody is opening a tap and you need to build that pressure. The grid system works in a very simplified analogy like that water system. That in the evening around this hour, there is so much being drawn out of the grid. The power that is coming out of the grid is at a peak. It peaks around this time. And that means from our all generating points, somebody in Dandora from the control point at KPLC has to coordinate that whenever there is an increase in demand, we bring in more units to generate and meet that demand as and when it happens. It's a supply chain logistic. And I think when we're in university, we used to admire this place down street called Munyiris. As a university bus stops there, the demand peaks, but within about 20 minutes, those guys are able to serve all of you chicken and chips. Now, a similar control center happens that if there is a drop of one plant and it's at peak demand, then you need to be able to scramble another plant to come in. The challenge with solar, and wind, the new renewables, is that they have vagaries. When the wind stops blowing, there is no power. So we must bring in another power plant. And that's what David talked about, peaking plants, which means we must build our base load generation to a level where we can support new renewables. You would ask me the question, in Germany, for example, the renewables are much more, and they are relying heavily to more than 50% on renewables. What they've been able to invest in is called a smart grid. The smart grid with technology then starts to even out those vagaries. As an economy today, our priority of putting more investment in the power sector should be going towards reaching more people, hence the last mile project. To invest on a smart grid would happen after we have developed sufficient base. Our base is still small, we are only 2 gigawatts. So when you bring in a lot of those variabilities, you would need to invest a lot of money to improve your grid. New York City alone has an installed capacity of 52 giga. As a country with a population of just over 40 million, we have 2 giga. So our investment, what the MD talked about, long-term least cost power development plan, focuses on increasing that base while we also upping demand. So yes, we will be bringing in solar, but we've got to bring in proportions that do not disrupt your current supply. Thank you.
I'm very happy to state that our power plants, most of them actually are registered. We get CRs and we get compensated. The hydros and also the geothermal plants. And for example, in 2017, we were able to get 57 million shillings. So it's an area with great opportunities. I know the price, the market price of carbon came down significantly, but we know as a result of the collapse or almost non-operationalization of the Kyoto Protocol. But we still see that moving forward, this is an area that has a lot of potential for us, particularly as we venture more into renewables. All the geothermal power plants registered. If we do solar, we'll be part of that, and we'll be building into that. So once that market gets active, again, one thing that I want to just state where we see a lot of opportunity there is there have been thoughts and discussions around using Nairobi Securities Exchange as a trading center for carbon credits for Africa. And that presents a huge opportunity. In fact, in Kenya, I think we are, if not the only one, that has been able to earn a lot of carbon credit revenues. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Aliken, for inviting us here. It's been great. Thank you so much, Madam MD, for coming as well. My name is Calvin Jodisi. I have 2 questions. So one is, when I was growing up in Nyanza, we had this, the power plant that is in Sondu Miriu. I would love to know how is it doing and probably how much megawatts it's generating, because when I was growing up, we used to go there, you see the Chinese doing the work, but I would really love to know about that. Number 2 is, I think what we asked about the solar. I mean, there's so many VCs that actually investing a lot in, off-grid solar and other energy. And my question is that, how is it going to be in future? Because right now you find that if you go to start modestly, they've tried to put solar panels almost in every building, and they're actually generating a lot of energy in that. And almost every institution is adapting to that. How is the future in terms of that? Will we be able to get maybe the prices going down and all those kind of stuff? And then last but not least, how do you see KenGen share? Because I'd love to invest in KenGen probably maybe this year, next year. How do you see KenGen shares in the next 10 years if I was to invest long term? Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation today. My name is Adero. I work in energy finance. And my question is for you, Mrs. Miano. I just want to know, what are your thoughts in terms of the gender imbalances within the sector? I mean, having worked in the energy sector for a few years, you walk into events, whether it's conferences or even just meetings, and it's very quickly apparent that sometimes I'm one of just a couple of women in the room. you being a female CEO within the energy sector, and as I saw on Ali Khan's Twitter, you are just one of 2 female CEOs of publicly listed companies in Kenya. I want to know, do you feel that you have a responsibility towards perhaps catalyzing more female representation within the sector? And if you do feel so, what are some recommendations or solutions that you are proposing?
I'm called Adrian Tambo, student graduate in electrical engineering. I have few questions. One will go to Mr. David. I want to know about the maximum capability of the geofield. What is the target? Because when you go there to do exploration, you have like something to say that this is what we're targeting in this field. Secondly, just to add on the nuclear, as KenGen, this goes to the MD, Ms. Miano. As KenGen, do you have plans in investing in nuclear, generally? Then third, about the thermal. As you are trying to lower the thermal product, as in you are trying to increase on the renewable energy, it means also you are reducing on the cost that is being charged on the thermal. Then in a situation that we find ourselves that we've produced a lot of renewable energy, clean energy, that is able to cater for the demand of the country, then it means in a way we cannot do the thermal. What will you do to the plants, the thermal plants, in that situation? This one goes to...
How many more?
One.
This is a record.
The last one goes to Engineer Moses. There was a feasibility test that was done on a hydropower plant, Gogo, that currently it's producing 4 megawatts, but the feasibility test shows that it can produce 60 megawatts. What's the plan on it? Thank you.
I think I like the way he's thinking. How is Kenyan share price likely to grow moving in the future? Let me tell you what's happening in the stock exchange, and then you can ask yourself why. In 2015, we had only 1% foreign ownership of our equity in Nairobi Security Exchange. As we speak today, we have 13% foreigners. KenGen shares are now owned by around 12%. 12% institutional shareholders. Despite the fact that we have 190,000 shareholders, the ones that own a large chunk of it, government having taken 70%, so that one is, you don't talk about it. But the balance of the 30%, 13% is currently owned by foreigners, and that's a jump in just 2 years. 12% is owned by institutional investors, funds managers, and the rest. Those who took advantage of the rights issue, which we put in the market at 6 shillings and 55 cents. As we speak today, Kenyan share is running above the Nairobi Security Exchange Index. It's ranging, and because of the depressed general market depression, is around 840 shillings. So as the MD did show in the slide, it's gone to a high of 9 something, almost 10. It's currently running at around 29% above the rights issue price. And those people who took that advantage have made 11 billion shillings, which they have. Either they have realized it or they have shared it. Now, if you look into the future, and I speak from experience having worked across several industries, from manufacturing to aviation to other sectors. The only sector that you are sure of your revenue today, I know what, given the current portfolio projects of the power plant that I have, I can tell you the money will earn 10 years from today, because it's all contracted in the power plant, in the power purchase agreements. Now, anything we put up as additional power plant, and again, remember my starting point, we build power plants and we manufacture electricity. When we did the 280 megawatts, we immediately added 8.4 billion on our turnover and improved our bottom line from around 2.8 close to 11, and around 5, goes up to 11, because there's also a bit of tax benefits and the rest because of investment allowance and the rest. We are going to put all carrier 1 unit 6 and all carrier 5 is going to add plus minus 250 megawatts. If you use the same ratio that came out of the 280 megawatts, you can see we are talking about something like another 6 to 7 billion building in. So if you do the trend analysis, and if this happens and everything remains, you can see it's a share that has potential. The rest, I leave it to you for your judgment. But if you think like the foreign investors, then if you are not inside, ask yourself why.
Calvin, you said when you are young about Sondu Miriu. Finally, Sondu Miriu was constructed. It's a plant, it's a 60 megawatt plant. Then downstream of Sondu Miriu, we have Sangoro. That is 20 megawatts. And they are both running well. They are resilient performers. And even in our portfolio, they are quite reliable. As you're aware, we don't have a dam in Sondu and Sangoro. They are run off the river. But we thank God that the western region receives quite a lot of water. But earlier in the year, when we had the drought, we know that Sondu had very little water. The inflow had gone down up to 7 cumecs. As we speak here today, as you ask about Sondu, we have about 115 cumecs. And so we are running them full blast, very decent contribution, and should be more proud of the Sangoro. Then Adero, gender imbalance is actually real, especially in this kind of a sector, heavily technical. And we have seen over time that this has been a male-dominated sector, but we have seen a lot of improvement. We have employed many more ladies, especially in the technical field also. That's where we haven't had a lot of participation by the ladies. In our records now, in our employment, we have lady technicians, craftsmen, we have a chief engineer, and many other engineers at lower levels. And so the numbers are improving. I think currently we could be at around 22% ladies. That's against, is it? Yeah, 22% of ladies, but that still is an improvement. KenGen has put in place measures, especially to support the women. And we have in place a forum, which we call Pink Energy. I think you have read about it. And this is a forum in place that is supported by the board and management so that it can assist women to grow professionally, to grow in courage, to have their careers grow and participate more. It is also a mentoring forum, and it is working quite well. We have seen a lot of improvement. And on a personal level, I was the founding patron of the Pink Energy, but I have since handed over to another patron because my portfolio covers the pink and the blue or whatever other color, green, that the gentleman will eventually choose. So I am no longer the patron of Pink Energy, but that is what we have in place. I also believe I should make a mark, I should play a role in resolving this gender imbalance, should be able to participate in encouraging and mentoring other women, also to apply for jobs at senior management, to sharpen their skills so that they are able to get those jobs. We should also have programs that encourage ladies all the way from high school, university, and across, so that we have many more of them wanting to work in this technical sector. Also, I think the other imbalance is at senior level. That also we have very, very few women working towards it, deliberate effort during recruitment to encourage qualified women not to shy away from getting out there, coming out, and applying for those jobs. So yes, I feel I have a calling. I'll only have failed if I do not make an impact. Thank you.
There was a nuclear question, and I think there was a multi-sided question as well. But then we're coming here for 3, and then I'm going to give everyone a chance to wrap up. Yeah.
Very quickly, this was asked by some gentleman who asked me a question. Tambo, you asked whether KenGen has any future plans to invest in nuclear. And as the CEO said in the presentation, is that nuclear is a long-term strategy for the country. We have a Kenyan National Electricity Board, which is actually doing the preparation in terms of policy framework, safety measures. And KenGen is very close to the board, and we have actually trained about 12 staff on nuclear science, masters in nuclear science. So we are in that preparation journey. So when the time comes, long term, 15 years from now, KenGen will be part of that journey. So we are not outside the nuclear preparation. Can I quickly comment on off-grid, what will happen? We know there's a lot of off-grid. This was asked by Calvin. There's a lot of activity on off-grid, micro-grid, mini-grid. Even the government now has the COSA program looking at 14 countries targeting 2 million homes. As it is today, the grid has not expanded to the remotest areas in the country. There's a big effort on the last mile. And what we see happening is these off-grids at one point, they will come to be integrated to the grid. And there are studies going on how to integrate the off-grid with the main grid when that time comes. So when the new policy framework in the current energy bill, which is going on, we see the net metering issue coming on board. So when that integration comes, then that meets together. So it's important that the two systems run together so that every Kenyan has an opportunity to enjoy the benefits of electricity.
So you see the mini grid connecting with the normal grid?
Yes.
And that's interesting. Thanks.
Evening. My name is Kamau Monio. I'm a tax consultant. So first, I want to thank the team, especially Mr. Wekesa, very articulate. Now, to Mr. John, you are talking about steam, income from steam. I understand there's GDC, there's KenGen. So GDC sells you the steam. How do you articulate that as an income? And you are actually paying the steam to GDC. The second question, we know KenGen has been struck with corruption. Now, I want the whole team to answer.
That was a big statement.
Yeah,
okay.
That is true, because
well, how?
there has been allegations. Let me put it as there has been allegations. So I want to put the question to the whole team. It's a yes or no question. You tell us, are there cartels in KenGen? Yes or no question. And On top of that, we know what happened. Mr. Arikan, we know what happened to the former CEO, Eddie. What ate him up? There were allegations of corruption. Because I'm not an activist. I'm not an activist. I'm just saying. I'm a patriot. I'm just saying. You see, Madam Rebecca, they are also the contracts you are issuing at KenGen are multi-billion. So what are you specifically doing as the head of the parastatal? What are you specifically doing to ensure that the corruption levels that you've seen in the past in KenGen goes down?
Shall we deal with that first before I take the other two questions? Because I think there was some assumptions. I will say this, that also we have a lot of propaganda in our social media. We have paid for propaganda. Let's be honest. A lot of allegations are made which are not founded. Of course, there are stories which then turn out to be right as well. But I think all I can say in Albert's case, from my personal point of view, and I knew Albert and I knew Eddie and I now know Rebecca, is that Albert came up to retirement age, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the issue. It was not anything, and I can speak on behalf of Albert and I can speak on behalf of Rebecca and Eddie and say that these are very straightforward people. And I'm going to give it to them to answer, but I cannot imagine that someone like Rebecca would like something like that to tarnish her reputation. So, over to you.
Thank you for that question. I want to confirm that I'm not aware of any specific corruption cases in KenGen. We will be glad to receive details of that. If there is any specific allegations, we will handle them squarely. We do know that the former MD's, Eddie Njoroge, his contract came to an end in 2013. There was a transition. Engineer Mugo also attained the age of retirement last year, and he retired very well with dignity. Two fine gentlemen. And in terms of our procurement, we undertake our procurement in accordance with the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. We have a transparent system. On a personal goal, I am a champion of governance. We have an anonymous reporting system that is run, and all cases are reported. I want to inform you that since I got ability to log into the system by virtue of my office, I haven't seen a single case being reported that way. But we would like to invite you to KenGen, interact with us, be able to understand how we work, so that you can also understand what you have and what has caused such comments. Because I think we are fairly transparent, and we do not have those cases. Most welcome. Thank you.
GDC?
Yes.
So, I think thank you so much for that question. I think there's been a bit of misunderstanding. What happens is that, in summary, the Olkaria field is licensed to KenGen to develop. And this started well before. So what happens is that the steam that is generated out of that largely belongs to KenGen. But there's a history to how this plays in. prior to the 280 megawatts, government had used funds to drill 59 wells. These 59 wells were vested to GDC. So what happens is that we enter into an agreement with GDC where we pay them for the cost of the 59 wells, the revenue that comes. So you see that in accounts. But we do maintain the wells for them. It's on KenGen land, so we get a bit of revenue for that. So technically, out of the revenue that come out of that, out of the 59 wells, GDC gets 68%. We remain with around 32% of that to cover our costs. But KenGen has also drilled its own wells in Olkaria because it's KenGen licensed area. We have just finished drilling 80 wells, and we're also drilling others. We also have our own rigs. We have 3 rigs, KenGen own rigs, and we do a lot of drilling, exploiting Olkaria. So the revenue that we talk about is from sale of our own steam, the 80 wells plus other wells that we've drilled using our own KenGen rigs. But the 59 wells that government vested on GDC, we pay them for using those wells. On a revenue share, 68% goes to them, 31% comes to us because of the maintenance of the steam field and all that we do ourselves. But in other locations outside Olkaria, then of course the jurisdiction of the ADC. But Olkaria itself is licensed to KenGen. And that's with the slide that's there, you can see the last, there it says 1,500 megawatts potential steam resource in Olkaria. Now that is the area we are exploiting, and that's the steam we are selling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Rebecca, for the insightful presentation made. My name is Raphael Okot from Consumer Insight. And my question is, as KenGen, how do you manage customer expectations?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Karanja. I'm from the Geothermal Association of Kenya. And I have 3 questions. The first question is on diversification. Madam CEO presented something about KenGen C on diversification. And I'll use an example. In the US, they extract lithium from their geothermal brine for batteries. So as KenGen, and being a leader in the geothermal industry, can we diversify in terms of extracting lithium, if there is, for batteries, for example? Number 2, we have seen the Suswa splitting and things like that. And just recently, I think a day ago or 2 days ago, in Hawaii, there's a geothermal plant that was shut down because of volcanicity. Let's not ignore that we are in the Rift Valley. As scientists, being a scientist myself, and KenGen having the necessary equipment and technical know-how, have you done maybe some studies to see the risks that are involved? Because geothermal is really capital intensive. And my final question is on licensing. KenGen, I think, has licenses for Olkaria and Eburu, but we have other potential sites. Do you plan to have another license, or KenGen, Olkaria and Eburu is enough? Thank you.
I'm aware we're on a Friday night, and I'm also aware that you've all been really great and come here on a Friday night, so let's be reasonable on time. Who's going to take those questions on?
There's something we are doing on mineral extraction, which was an idea born out of the innovation seminar, and David is running with that idea. Maybe you can just handle that before I go back to customer expectation.
Yes, true. We have silica in geothermal. Silica is even medicine. It's good for your bones. There's a geothermal spa in Olkaria. I forgot to mention that is an innovation. So sometimes take a weekend and go and bath in Olkaria geothermal spa. It's good for your health. There's also lithium. There's also carbon dioxide. And I like your statement that US is extracting lithium from from geothermal. We have run a tender, international tender, for mineral extraction. And we got 4 companies, and we went for the deep request for proposal, and they all fell off. So that issue in the US, I'll catch up with you. Please come to my office. We know what's happening out there in silica and lithium extraction, and I want to engage you to get to the bottom who is exactly extracting that lithium. Because where we are now, we are going back to the market, and we are encouraging even experts to come on board so that we can get it right. In terms of silica, there's only one company we know, somewhere in New Zealand, that is extracting silica. It's still not confirmed, it's technology in research. So it's an interesting one, Alikan. And please come over, we have a deeper discussion. It's a big area, and we are very keen to actually do it through the SEO support.
There is a question around the geological concerns, and we are not discounting what is happening out there. And you said you're a member of the Geothermal Association, and we also associate and seek peer review information on other geothermal fields globally. We are in touch with experts across the world. Different geothermal fields have different features. We in Olkaria not only monitor geological features, we monitor the performance of the reservoir. So you're right, we have invested heavily in equipment for predictability of reservoir sustainability, but we also have seismic sensors across the entire field going all the way to Longonot. In the event of any movement that is significant, we would know. And for the 60 years that we've been monitoring that field, we have not seen a spike that would cause or should cause any source of fear. So we are speaking, and we also liaise with the geological authorities in the country. Today we have a PS, a sector PS in charge of geology, and we share data. It is in our interest that we maintain continuous research and monitoring of the behavior of the Rift Valley and our geothermal field in specific. Just before the CEO comes in to wrap up on the other one, the gentleman asked something about, that was Tambo, on how we go ahead to establish the capacity of a field. I would say that's a technical question. Please feel free to engage us even after this session. We'll be able to share with you some information. But the more specific one on Gogo is 2 megawatt. It's a 2 megawatt plant. It is true, there was a study that was done. But when that study was done, it was not done in isolation to Gogo only. It was done around our entire portfolio of the hydropower plants. What we do from time to time is we carry out studies to see whether we can harvest more energy from some of those runoffs, whether our plants need rehabilitation, and we then categorize and weight a priority list for investment of funds. Over that study, we've been able to rehabilitate a number of our plants in the Cascades and even increase capacity. Currently, we are sourcing funding for updating the study on Gogo. But we have installed equipment from last year to carry out what is called river gauging. We monitor the flow levels. A hydropower plant is only viable if there is enough water. And with the time, the water gets compromised depending on what's being done upstream. So we need to be sure that when we invest further, the plant will generate power. There's always a story. I have somebody in my village where I come from. There's a seasonal river. Whenever I visit home and it's rained heavily like now, he asks me, what type of engineer are you? You have not put a power plant on this river that is just next to your home. But when I go and it's dry, he never asks me the same question. Thank you.
So I think the question on customer expectations was asked by Raphael. Of course, KenGen being a generator of electricity and then sells all of it in bulk to the off-taker. Probably we do not have as many customers, but everybody we interact with is our customer, is our stakeholder, and we value our customers. We have in place a service delivery charter where we have timelines that we have promised to be able to serve the customers. We have a website. We avail information as and when it is required. And like I had said earlier, we have a theme to build our relations. We have a theme to bring out the best. We have a theme to serve our customers with presence. And we are soon establishing sort of a mini Huduma Center to make it easier, so that when you come to KenGen, you will find a desk that will be able to guide you, and if they can, in the first instance, be able to address the customer expectations or questions or inquiries, that will be done. If there is need to escalate it to that level, the person who served you will ensure that you get an appointment and that you get the service that you're requiring from KenGen. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I believe we've run over our time. I would like to give my panelists the opportunity to make any closing comments before I close this discussion.
Thank you so much. Just want to appreciate you. As we've said, KenGen is a solid company. It's a growing company, and we definitely look forward to growing our company and making it more profitable as we move into the future. So think about it, and we want to welcome you to discuss with that if you need to, the opportunities that we have within KenGen. Thank you.
Mine is to invite you to come to KenGen as partners in innovation, so that we can share these ideas and convert them to value-adding solutions to the society. Thank you.
I'm living in the hope that this interaction allows us to share more information with you. And wherever you are, then you are ambassadors of our brand. This is a local brand. I think it's a good brand. We have been given the opportunity and privilege to serve in the positions we serve, and we are happy to continue promoting this brand. We are passionate about this brand, and we would like to share that passion with you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for patiently listening to our story, our stories, and you can confirm today that we have put in place structures in KenGen that will make us remain competitive enough as a company, and a company that will create value in this country, also be able to support the Big Four agenda. And on top of my mind is also stakeholder engagement and partnership. But having said all that, finally we thank God it's Friday. We have a weekend ahead of us. In case you have time, you're welcome to the KenGen Spa in Naivasha to see the first geothermal spa in Africa and be able to enjoy water there that has been said to be therapeutic. And after working hard the whole week, you're invited to Naivasha. We want to thank you very much, and let us continue engaging. Our doors are open. We welcome you to KenGen. Any question, any inquiry, please feel free to interact with us. And I wish you a very, very good and restful weekend. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank all my panelists for a really tremendous engagement. It was a really rich conversation. I think we were number one without any help from anybody for like the entire session. So we're proud of that too. It shows that people are involved in this discussion. And I think really it was a really rich conversation. And Madam MD, thank you for sharing the early story, which told us about how you came all the way to this seat. And we're really grateful for that, because that was a personal story. So thank you once again to everybody. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, and thank you, John.